Welcome to Banyan Books, Branches of Wisdom, celebrating the joy of bright ideas and heartful lifelong learning. Branches of Wisdom is a series of intimate conversations with the world's most influential authors and visionaries. We explore spirituality and the human mind, ecology and culture. Most episodes are recorded with a live audience. You can join our live events and submit questions to your favorite guests. Check out our upcoming schedule at banyan.com. Since 1970, Banyan Books has been a rich oasis at the crossroads of wisdom and philosophy, offering resources for humanity's evolving paths. We're a locally owned, independent bookstore in the heart of Vancouver's Kitsilano neighborhood. Visit us in person or shop online at banyan.com. Please subscribe, follow, like, and leave your reviews for the podcast. And now, enjoy.
Welcome everyone to tonight's special event with Samra Zafar, celebrating the release of her new book, Unconditional, Break Through Past Limits to Transform Your Future. Samra's a really inspiring person, and I'm really looking forward to this event offering. My name is Jacob Steele, and I'm the events manager at Banyan Books. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that while we have participants joining from across the globe, Banyan Books is on the unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples, including the territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. If you enjoy today's event, we invite you to support Banyan's free programming by making a donation. You'll find a PayPal donation link in the video description below. And every contribution helps us to make these offerings accessible for all. Samra welcomes your questions throughout the evening. Please feel free to type them into the chat at any time. And now it's my honor to introduce tonight's guest. Dr. Samra Zafar is an award-winning speaker, best-selling author, physician, and educator, named one of Canada's top 100 most powerful women and one of the top 25 most inspirational women. Her debut memoir, A Good Wife, tells the powerful story of her escape from a forced child marriage and how she rebuilt her life through education and resilience. Her new book, Unconditional, is deeply honest and empowering guide to healing from trauma and unlearning the limiting beliefs that hold us back. Samra is also the founder of Brave Beginnings, a national charity supporting women who's escaped abuse, and she serves on the board of the Women's College Hospital Foundation. Please join me in warmly welcoming Samra Zafar.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jacob. And thank you everybody who joined in and who are joining us live and who will watch this later. It's truly, truly an honor to be in this space.
Thank you. So, well, why don't we begin by looking at what inspired the new book by going back and looking at your life path and what brought you here, maybe some of the content of A Good Wife, which maybe not everyone's read.
Yes, absolutely. From the backstory perspective and what led me here, I grew up in a small town in Abu Dhabi, about 2 hours away from the main city. Went to a private British school, was passionate about my education. I was one of the girls who didn't want to get married like my cousins or my friends did. I wanted to go to school and become a doctor and change people's lives. And then when I was 16 years old, I was told by my mother that there's a marriage proposal, and in a few months, I would be getting married to a man who lived in this faraway country called Canada. I didn't really have much of a say in the matter. And then a few months after my 17th birthday, I was married to him. The first day I met him was actually my wedding day. And then a few months after that, I came to this beautiful and cold country called Canada. And I arrived here as a child bride in a forced marriage, became a teen mom, and was subjected to a lot of isolation, a lot of humiliation, a lot of abuse of all kinds for about a decade. So it was a lot of difficulties, a lot of challenges. But even in those dark days, I would always dream about getting my education one day. In fact, in those early years of my marriage, I would stand in front of a mirror and practice my graduation speech, even when there was no hope of ever being able to go to school. So that passion for education and learning never left me. And I fought for it, whatever I could, one step at a time. And then eventually that became my escape from my marriage. I was in my second year of undergrad after 10 years of marriage and 2 kids when I finally chose to leave. And the first book, A Good Wife, chronicles that entire journey. And then I thought, my biggest challenge would be to learn the new skills that I never had the chance to learn. So how to pay my bills, how to fill gas in my car, how to talk to people, how to search for a job, how to network, how to build my resume, how to do just the things that others took for granted. But yes, all those things were difficult, but I was a good learner and I picked up on those things pretty quickly. What was the biggest challenge for me? And as I've evolved in my journey, I've learned the biggest challenge for a lot of people who have had any form of oppression or trauma or challenges or adversity in our lives, which pretty much is every one of us. The biggest challenge for me was unlearning the things that had been fed to me from such a young age, the beliefs, the messaging that became part of my psychological blueprint and the way I saw myself and the way I saw others. I had grown up with some very faulty ideas about love, about faith, about parenting, about confidence, about my place and opportunities as a woman. And those are the things that even after I left my marriage continued to live on in my mind because they were so deeply ingrained in my subconscious. So that journey started after I left my marriage. And that is the journey that I've shared in Unconditional, with including the stories of my life and how I've done it, but also including some of the science of healing as now, I work in the field as a mental health physician, and bringing those story and science pieces together to hopefully offer a roadmap to readers and audiences and other people who are listening to me or reading my book or watching me, hopefully offer a roadmap for them to be able to do the same in their lives, because we all deserve to live freely for who we are and accepted and loved freely for who we are.
You mentioned roadmap, and well, I know you went on a road journey as part of your journey of trusting your own intuition. Can you speak about that, and also about trusting one's own intuition, knowing what is one's own authenticity versus what are these conditioned voices that we need to unlearn within ourselves?
Yeah, I am a big fan of road trips, as anyone who has read the book or will read the book will realize. And one of the things that I have learned, I think it's one of the most important lessons in my life, is that when we look for answers, when we are facing a major decision or a crossroads in our life and we want them answers, what do we normally do? Our default becomes we're going to ask 10 different people for advice, and then we're going to get 10 different answers, and we're going to be more confused than ever. But we oftentimes forget to ask the most important person, which is ourselves. And in order to listen to ourselves and listen to our own voice, we need to give ourselves the space to do so. And that happens when we are in solitude. And by solitude, I mean being one with yourself and tuning out the noise that surrounds us. So I have done that at numerous junctures in my life. And now I'm a big believer in it, because every time I've created this space to listen to my own inner voice, it has never, ever guided me the wrong way. Because no one knows you better than you. However, when we have gone through trauma, abuse, or these kinds of things, what happens then is that our relationship with our own voice, it gets broken. Our relationship with our intuition gets broken. So what then happens is we have our voice telling us something, but we don't trust it enough and we don't act on it. And that happens because we were taught at a very young age not to listen to that voice. So in my case, I always wanted to go to school. I always wanted to become a doctor. I always wanted to do, all these things. But I was told, don't be silly. You're a girl. You're not allowed to dream big. You're not allowed to expect your dreams come true. Then in my marriage, I was told that my place in life and in the world is to be supporting my husband's goals and ambitions, not my own. And it is to be a good wife and a good mother and a good daughter-in-law. But, I don't have an identity of my own. And then, whenever I wanted to go, even when I before, like in those months when I was leading up to my marriage, my voice inside of me told me, no, I don't want to do this. But everybody around me was like, no, this is the best thing for you. You should be grateful that you're getting to the real purpose of being a woman sooner rather than later. So at all these junctures throughout my life, I was taught not to trust my own voice because the voices around me were so loud. And when you're a child, you're supposed to trust those voices around you, right? Because those are your parents. Those are the people who know better. However, when you're not taught to trust your own voice, you don't know how to do that even when you become an adult. So in my case as well, that intuition, that relationship was broken. And it was very much in need of repair. And that is what my journey has been. I think the biggest part of my journey has been to create space to listen to myself. So when I have done these road trips, and this road trip that I took, which I've described in Unconditional, it would add a very important point in my life a few years ago when I was at a crossroads in terms of my career. When I left my marriage, I did a degree that would get me a job. So I did economics and finance, got a job in the bank. I needed to put food on the table for my children. It was very much coming out of a place of survival. However, as I embarked on sharing my story, writing my book, and the amount of joy and purpose and meaning that I felt from doing the work that I did in helping others see the light that they have within themselves, that is what inspired me. That is what made me wake up every single day. That is what lit a fire in my belly. That is what I wanted to do. And I wanted to take what life has taught me and combine that with the lessons through science and through training and through education to really bring those two things together. And however, at the same time, all the people around me were like, don't be silly. You are already established in your career. Why would you leave all that behind and go embark on a whole new journey? Be satisfied with where you are. You've worked hard enough. You've already reached all these amazing heights, right? And they were coming from the right intentions. They were my friends. But what I was doing, I was like, the more people I asked, the more confused I became. So I then said, you know what? I need to make space to listen to myself. So I went on this 3-week road trip. I told my children, do not call me unless it's an emergency. And an emergency does not mean we don't know what to do for dinner. Can you help us? An emergency is a real emergency. And I put a couple of pillows and a blanket in the trunk of my car, and I just left. I had no itinerary. I had no hotel bookings. I had no destination in mind. I just started driving. And I ended up in Quebec, and then I ended up in almost up to the border of Labrador. I went through New Brunswick a bit, and it was this very impromptu, like I'll just drive and wherever I end up that night, I will try to find a hotel. And if I can't find a hotel, I'll sleep in my car. That's why I had the pillows and the blanket. Most nights I was able to find a hotel. And it turned out to be this incredible journey because my intention on that journey was I'm not going to talk myself out of doing what I feel like doing. So if I'm driving and there's a detour that I feel like taking, I'm going to take it. There's no destination that I'm going to be late for. So I'll just do it. And a couple times, that resistance came up. Oh no, but like, why would I take a detour? I don't know what's down there. And then I would turn around and I'm like, nope, I'm going to do this. This is exactly what I'm trying to repair. Is that space, or that repair between intuition and action. So if I feel like something, I'm going to trust it enough and do it. And it turned out to be incredible, because I ended up on these secluded beaches, or these things that I never would have explored otherwise. And then talking to people, and who would say something, and then they would tell me about some other place, and then I would go there. And it was just so beautiful. And throughout that journey, I was also listening to audiobooks about psychology and healing and all these things that fascinate me. And by the end of that 3-week road trip, it was crystal clear to me what my decision was. And that is when I decided I'm going to apply to medical school. Doesn't matter what everybody thinks I should do or shouldn't do. I want to do it. I need to get out of my own way. I need to give myself the permission. And I did it. And I got in, and now I'm a physician, and I'm training in psychiatry, which is again, like, that was my dream since I was a little girl. So it's again, the world tells us all these things, that it's too late or whatever. But if you believe it, if you see that, you have the right to go after it, and you have the power to achieve it.
It reminds me a little bit, this road trip slightly reminds me of like Julia Cameron's Artist Dates. And I never made the connection before. Do you know that Julia Cameron's, she did the Artist's Way book? And
I've heard of it, but I haven't read it. No. Yeah.
It's just like it's a practice for artists, basically artists, to heal and to discover their voice. And one of the things you do is you go on a date with your inner artist, and no one else comes with you. It's like your own journey, and you take them, like the inner child almost. You take them on a date, and it's I guess it's a way also of restoring your intuition and your connection to your authentic voice. I hadn't made that connection, but it's exactly. I mean, you were doing it in a much bigger way, but one of the things you were saying. Well, no, just your whole story. Like, where did the courage come from? And I know you talk about in your book about fearlessness, this word fearlessness and courage. And because as I was following your story, I'd be like, you're so raw and honest and vulnerable about your process, like throughout in this book and in the earlier book. And it seems like, oh yeah, I could do that. I could see myself making that choice. But when you add it all up, it's like you've actually done something very extraordinary in your life. And I'm like, no, I don't know that I could actually do all these things that you've done. So, but anyways, where does the courage and fearlessness come from?
So first of all, I'll challenge you on that, Jacob, a little bit. That you don't think you can do all these things, because everything extraordinary is accumulation of ordinary steps, and every big thing that we do is just a series of tiny little things that you have done. So we all have that power. And like I always say that courage is that little tiny action that you take when you're terrified and you're afraid, but you say to yourself, yes, I'm afraid, but I'm going to move forward a tiny bit anyway. And you talked about what I said about fearlessness. I hate the word fearless. I think it's a myth. I think it's an absolute, it goes against everything that we are as humans. There's no such thing as fearless. None of us are fearless. If we are fearless, we're not humans, we're robots. Or there's something seriously damaged. There's something that is in great need of healing, because fearless is not a thing, and courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is, I am terrified, but I'm going to still take this tiny step forward. And when you do that enough times and enough little tiny steps, that is what ultimately leads to bold and extraordinary results. So if we look at the accumulation of, she has done or he has done something so extraordinary, and they have had such an extraordinary journey, there was no roadmap of that. There was no plan for that. There was no even in my wildest dreams and imaginations, if I could not have thought about being a 2-time best-selling author and a doctor and all these things that I'm doing. What I just did was what felt right to me in that moment. So when I wanted to go to school and everybody told me that, no, give that up, I still chose to keep the hope alive by, like I said, standing in front of a mirror and practicing my graduation speech. When I was told that there's no money to pay for your education, I started a home-based daycare in that house in Mississauga where I used to live with my ex-husband and his family, because I wasn't allowed to go out and get a job. So I started babysitting and tutoring at home and saving money secretly to save for my first year tuition fee as a part-time student. Did I know at that time that yes, I will be able to go to school and I will be able, and not only that, I will graduate at the top of my class and win awards and stuff? Not in a million years. All I did was, what is in front of me right now? And what can I do to move a tiny little bit closer to that dream, to that goal, to that vision, whatever that is, right? At that time, my vision was simply being able to get into university and then simply being able to graduate. And then it became from there, I want to be able to provide my daughters a better life. I was terrified of leaving my marriage, absolutely petrified, because I come from a family where women never leave. You are supposed to stay in your marriage and make it work, even if you're unsafe, even if you're being beaten up every day, whatever, you are supposed to stay. And I was told that when I, left, that I had committed some grave sin and I would burn in hell forever. And it was absolutely terrifying because I lost every single person from my family, from the community I was part of. So it wasn't that I was fearless or I did something extraordinary. For me, it was simply, I want to give my daughters a better life. That was the vision. And while I was terrified of that, I didn't know how to do it. I didn't even know how to fill gas in my car or pay my bills or any of that. But I was like, okay, I'll learn. It'll take one step forward. I'll go to counseling for this. I'll go and, sell butter chicken out of my student housing apartment in order to make ends meet because I didn't have money for groceries, or whatever I could to just move one tiny step closer. So when we talk about courage, courage is not something big. Courage happens in those tiny moments where no one else is watching. No one else is there to applaud you. No one else is there to motivate you. But you, in your inner voice, believe in something and say to yourself that I am going to move forward while I'm terrified. It happens in those whispers and nudges. And if you do that enough times, that is ultimately, you're going to look back and you're like, oh my God, I never realized I was capable of such extraordinary things. So courage happens in ordinary moments, and that is what ultimately leads to extraordinary results.
So a lot of the book is about unlearning and becoming free of our conditions. Actually, the title, Unconditional, I've been thinking about that a lot. It's a great title. Can you speak, first of all, what does that word unconditional mean to you, and why is that the title?
So unconditional to me means that you are existing and living freely without the conditioning, or in spite of the conditioning that society, culture, religion, and all these social structures have placed on you. And when I think of that title, I think of this vision that I used to have when I had left my marriage and I was, in my new life. I was working in the bank and I was, trying to just kind of get by. I was also going to therapy regularly because, I needed to process and work through everything that I'd been through. And I would say to my therapist that, I have this vision, this kind of dream where I'm standing at the edge of a cave. Like I've come out of the cave. Now I'm no longer, this was a cave I was trapped in for a long time, but now I'm standing at the edge of it with the vast open sky in front of me. It's on a mountain. I have my wings spread. I'm ready to fly. I'm ready to take off and soar. But I've got these chains that are attached to me. And the other end of the chain chains are being held by people who are still in that cave, which was my old life. And I just wish they'd let go so I can fly. I just wish that I don't have my ex-husband or my mother or my mother-in-law and all these people still living in my head, because I feel like the things that they used to say, the messaging that they put on me, I feel like that still holds me back. I can't fly. And my therapist just smiled and said, Samra, you have the power to undo the chains from your end. And I remember I just sat there and I had goosebumps all over me. I was like, oh my God, why am I waiting for them to let go? I can undo those chains. I can reach back. It might take a bit of work, but I can unclasp them and I can be free so I can fly. And that is what unconditional means to me. It's not that you haven't been through trauma or conditioning or you haven't been subjected to atrocities, adversity. We all have. We all go through our own share of traumas. We all go through our own share of adversities. We all have had difficulties in life. And we've all had people in our lives who have held us back or put us down. And even though the people may have now not be a part of your life, but they still continue to live on in your mind, in your psyche, in your subconsciousness, because they have been such a big part of your journey. However, we have the power in our hands we can't eliminate them, but we can limit their control over us. We can eliminate their control over us. And that is what unconditional means, is yes, I've been through all of these things, but I am unconditionally and freely myself. And I have the right to be loved for who I am. I have the right to be accepted for who I am, not just by others, but most importantly, by myself. And it's all about that radical self-acceptance. And that is, I believe, the ultimate freedom. When you accept yourself wholeheartedly, when you love yourself in all your imperfections for who you are, you're not going to accept anything less than that from other people. And that is what an unconditional life to me means.
Your dream reminds me of this line from Leonard Cohen, where he was somewhere in between his next step and the life he was in, and he wrote, "I'm standing on the ledge, and your fine spider web is fastening my ankle to the stone." So just like being held by this spider web, that's all that's holding you.
Yeah. And a lot of times when there are these things holding us, I'm not invalidating that they can definitely hold us back, and they have some power. But most of the power is the power that we give those things. And when we realize that, we also realize the power that we have to undo that and to untie those chains that hold us back.
And you have two daughters, and this was very important for your journey of leaving the marriage, right? And also continuing in your healing journey. Can you speak a bit about that relationship and as a parent and the unlearning that happens there?
I think that has been one of the biggest ones in my life. My daughters are now 23 and 18. When I left my marriage, they were 10 and 5. And I grew up, the way I was parented was very fear-based and shame-based. My idea of love was subservience, obedience, conformity, complicity, silence. That is what love was based on. Love was very conditional. It wasn't something that was just given to you. You had to earn it. You had to strive for it. You had to climb on all kinds of pedestals to be deserving of it. One of my very first memories as a child is my mother telling me this story about a woman asking her daughter for a glass of water, and the daughter goes and gets that glass of water and brings it back for her mother, and the mother had already fallen asleep by then. So the daughter stands by the bedside all night long waiting for the mother to wake up. And when the mother does wake up, she is filled with so much love that she embraces and kisses her daughter and gives her so much love and affection. And that's how you earn a mother's love, Samra. And that was so deeply ingrained in me. I remember the next night, I waited for my mom to fall asleep, went and got a glass of water and stood by the bedside, hoping she will wake up and see me. And obviously, I was, I think 5 or 6 years old, and I couldn't stand there. And I fell asleep on the floor. And then in the morning, woke up feeling absolutely so guilty and so undeserving of love that I could not even do this much to earn my mom's love. That was my idea of love. Love is something you have to earn. You have to go to all kinds of lengths. It's not something that's given to you. It's not your birthright. That is not the way I wanted to raise my children. I did not want to raise my daughters like that. I wanted them to be loved for who they are unconditionally. I wanted them to know that they have the right to be completely themselves, and they don't have to strive for my love or anyone's love. And if somebody is saying that they have to earn their love, that is not real love. So while I knew that, while I believed in that, I didn't know how to do it. I had no roadmap. I had no model of a good parent. My parents were both very, very flawed and damaged in their own parenting. Like it was this cyclical servitude of love and parenting that was passed on from generations. So if I am now wanting to break a cycle that's gone on for generations after generation, but I don't have the how to, there's no manual that comes from it. How do I do that? And when you don't know something, when you don't have any kind of model for it, it's so hard to learn and then also unlearn, because I'm trying to do something different, but I don't know if it works. And it also raises all kinds of fears in me because, every time you do something different, it feels uncomfortable. So am I doing it right? Am I not doing it right? Am I saying the right thing? Am I not saying the right thing? So it all was so ambiguous. But the one thing I always fell back on was my love for them is so pure and it's so unconditional. Yes, I'm going to make mistakes, but they know that I love them with everything in me. I today, like, even when it came to like when they went through their teens and they started dating, and I never went through dating. I was married when I was a kid. So it was so different for me to just figure out how to support my daughter through that. Both my daughters are queer. I grew up in an extremely homophobic culture. How do I support them through that? What is the best language to use? What are the right words to use and not use? So all these things were new to me, and I needed to do my own homework. But at the same time, I still made mistakes. And it was more about not being right, but about showing them that I'm making the effort. I'm sorry that I made a mistake. I'm going to do better. So, that Maya Angelou quote that you do your best, and when you know better, you do better. And that has been my philosophy with parenting and pretty much everything in my life. And, my on my 40th birthday a couple of years ago, my daughters gave me this jar, and they cut out 40 hearts. And on each heart was, so the jar was titled 40 Reasons Why We Love You. So each heart had one reason why they love me. And I read all of them, obviously, and my favorite one, which, brought tears to my eyes, was because you teach us how to love ourselves. And I'm going to tear up now. But that to me was the most beautiful thing, because that is what I want them to know, is that they are whole, they are lovable, and they don't have to strive for it in any way. That's something that they deserve. not just from me, more importantly from themselves, and also from anyone that comes into their life who is worthy of them.
What has been the role of others in community and intentional community? And you've had to sever some ties with family, but I know that you're well connected. You've made friends. You have a new husband, I guess, and so partner. Yeah. So yeah, to speak about that community and people and relations and.
Our communities are superpower. When you think about, we were talking earlier about like doing extraordinary things and courage and resilience. And I believe that resilience is a collective thing. Our resilience is so highly interdependent on each other. And in my case, for instance, I tried to leave my marriage 5 times before, and I could not leave. I was either sent back by my family or I went back because of loneliness, because of fear, because of some other roadblock that I faced. The final time that I was able to leave and actually go on and move forward was because of the community that I found. Because while I was facing a ton of shame and stigma and hatred and marginalization and all kinds of that, of shame from my family and people who I thought were my friends, I also made new friends when I left my marriage. I was a student at U of T Mississauga. I was living on campus. I was making friends who watched, and those people watched my children when I went to class or court. My professors who said motivational words to me when I needed them. My mentors who helped me make decisions at critical junctions in my life. All these people became my safety net. So today, I don't have like any relationship with anyone in my extended family. Like my father's no more. My mom and I have a very arm's length relationship. She still continues to shame and judge me for my life choices. I have zero relationships with anyone in my extended family. My daughters have chosen not to have a relationship with their father and by extension, any of his side of the family. So if you think about DNA family, it's just me and my daughters. And that is a price we've had to pay to live to live an unconditional life. That is the price we've had to pay. And yes, it hurts. But what gives us so much comfort is that we have an incredible amount of people who have become our chosen family. And these are people who we have met through, friendships, through career. Like a lot of my good friends are actually from my prior career in banking. And I am very intentional about who I bring into my life. And the biggest compass we have for that, who's right for it and who's not, is to listen to our intuition, is to listen to our body. Our body will often tell us things that our minds are not yet able to comprehend. So if you are in someone's presence where you feel that you have to wear a mask or you have to pretend to be someone you're not, that person's necessarily not right for you to be included in your inner circle. I mean, you can still have some kind of an arm's length relationship with them. Like, they could be a colleague or they could be an acquaintance or somebody you happen to just chat with once in a while. Or, I have many people like that. But the people in my inner circle are people who I can be absolutely myself with. And these are the people who you are with and they make you feel incredible about yourself. Not perfect, because there's no such thing as perfect, but good about who you are, good about every facet of you. And I'm very, very fortunate to have several people like that in my life who are my go-tos, who are, my mentor, John, who I talk about extensively in the book. He has become the closest thing I've ever had to a healthy parent. And I turned to him for a lot of advice. Similarly, my one of my best friends, it was my former boss at RBC, and he is now, such an incredible and close friend. And we talk about so many things on a regular basis. But there are people that are so connected, and they have become the chosen family, that community that I know I can fall back on at any point. And when you have that community around you, when you have that fabric of community and support, that becomes your safety net. It allows us to bounce back after failures, to take another step forward. And that is what resilience means, like, yes, I failed, but I can call on a friend and they're going to remind me of why I should keep going and why I should take another step forward. So there's going to be those moments. I know adversity is inevitable, but we're not meant to go through life alone. And sometimes that support doesn't come from the places where we want it to come from, like family and friends and whatnot. And then you just go out and create new communities. And that's the power of living in this big, beautiful, and vast world. And especially in a country like Canada, where we have the power to choose our community based on our values. And I think that's a very powerful thing.
A reminder to the audience to type in your questions. I see a couple rolling in, and keep them coming. We'll be reading out questions in a little bit. If you were to speak to like your younger self who was in the marriage at that time as yourself now, what would you say? Or to somebody maybe watching this now who might be in a similar situation?
If you had asked me this question 10 years ago, I would probably have said, I would tell my younger self to be fearless, or don't hold back, or keep trying, or whatever. But now when I look back, I have nothing but incredible love for my younger self. She did all of that. She was the courageous one. She did keep trying. She fought against all odds. It's because of her that I am here today. And the only thing I would say to my younger self is thank you. Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for fighting even when the whole world was against you. Thank you for doing everything you did. And that's why we're here. I almost think of my younger self as one of my daughters, if that makes any sense, and I have nothing but gratitude and an infinite amount of love for her. So I would not give her any advice. I would just say thank you.
It's very touching. So why don't we read out some audience questions, and you can keep them coming in. Here's a question. I believe it's from Sabina. If I've got that correct, it's S under S. But every 48 hours, a woman or a girl is killed in Canada. Looking further upstream, what do you think is wrong in our, quote, advanced society that makes this a daily fact of life? Patriarchy is still global. Yeah, it is Sabina, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Sabina, for that question. Very, very, very important. And I'll answer in a couple of ways. So first of all, violence against women is the most prevalent, yet the most hidden form of violence in the world. And you shared a very important fact. 48 hours, a woman is killed in Canada. Every few days, a woman is killed in Canada by her intimate partner. The majority of homicides of women around the world are actually committed by their intimate partners. So this is a global thing, and patriarchy is very much well and alive. And I think in today's world, it's actually roaring again, and even louder. Like you think of the resurgence of trad wives and all these, phenomenons that you thought were gone. Like my daughter the other day was asking me, Mom, am I going to have less rights than you did? And that's the sad part is that that's not something that she's saying as a joke. It's not even laughable. Like, it's actually something that is maybe even happening right in front of our eyes. I mean, we are lucky to be in Canada, but we're not very far from, a country that is rolling back on women's rights like by the day. So it is very much alive when it comes to patriarchy. What is the root causes? I think a lot of people are still not comfortable talking about it. The biggest ally of abuse and oppression is silence. And not choosing to speak about it is also a choice. And when we stay silent, even when internally we may have different values, we may think, oh yeah, that thing that's happening is wrong. Violence against women is wrong, right? But we're silent about it. That is actually being complicit. That is actually being complacent about the issue. And I think more and more of us need to speak up and break the silence, because when you break the silence, you put the shame where it belongs, which is with the abusers and the perpetrators. Second part is education. And education, not just for us as women, even if you think violence against women, who's committing the violence? It's men most of the time, right? So where are they? Where are they in the picture? We need allies. We need good men to be more vocal. We need good men to be standing up and showing up to I'm a public speaker, and I go to speak at so many women's events, and International Women's Day was always packed for me. Majority of the audience are women. I was at an International Women's Day event, and they told me, yeah, there are going to be some men there. There was one man there, right? We need them to show up. We need them to make this a men's issue. This is not a women's issue. It's a human rights issue. It's an all of us issue, and we need to stand in solidarity with each other against the problem. It's not men versus women. It's all of us against the problem. And we need to educate our children in a better way, because oftentimes we hide these things from our children. We don't want our kids to be exposed to all the ugliness that's happening in the world. But guess what? It is happening. And by not exposing our children, by sheltering them, we are actually depriving them of the tools that they need to protect themselves and others, or the tools that they need to become agents of change. So a number of years ago, my daughter said to me, Mom, I think my best friend might be in an abusive relationship. Her boyfriend is, he seems really great. Like, he buys her gifts and flowers and chocolates, but then he also says bad words to her, and he makes jokes at her expense, and he puts her down, and he doesn't want her to hang out with his friends. And I don't think that's right? Those are all the early signs of abuse that you talk about. And how did she know that? Because I talk about these things with her. I bring them with me to these events, and I would have done the same if I had a son. So these are the things we need to teach our children. We don't need to shelter them. We need to educate them. What does healthy relationships look like? What does healthy love looks like? What are the early signs of abuse? Because abuse never starts with a slap or a kick. There are some early signs that are oftentimes wrapped up in a lot of love and romance, and it feels really good because you're, like, wow, he's putting me on a pedestal, he's buying me all these gifts and stuff. But actually, those are subtle things there are that you can see. And I talk about that in my book quite a fair bit, about how do you keep track of those things and what's happening, and be able to recognize some problematic patterns early on before it gets to that stage. In my marriage, the first time the physical violence happened was about 8 years into the marriage. The first 5 years or 6 years were all emotional, verbal put downs, this, that. Like, in the beginning, it all seemed very lovely. So the progression of abuse is very, very insidious. However, by educating ourselves and our children, we can watch out for it. And if enough of us do that, the change always takes time, but it's always like like, let's start with changing ourselves and the immediate circle around us. And if enough of us do that, we have the power to change these things.
Thank you. Farah has a question. What do you think about someone who has the feeling of unease and trapped in the unwanted situation, but doesn't have a clear vision or motivation for what she or he wants in life?
So what I would say, thank you so much for that question, first of all. I think it's impossible to have a clear vision of something that, you may or may not do many years down the road. Like, you may have an idea, you may have some kind of a goal. Like, for me, the goal was I want to get my education. I didn't know what that looked like, what I would study, what I would, what university I would go to, nothing. I just had this idea that I want to get my education. So the fact that you are feeling uneasy right now is enough, is all the information that you need. However, like I said in the beginning, we are taught by society, by culture, by religion, by patriarchy, and all these things that no, don't trust that voice. That is like, doesn't matter, right? You have to listen to all of us. We're the experts. We're your parents. We're your friends. We're your well-wishers. We are your teachers. We are your whatever, right? This is the advice you should follow. This is how it's always been done. And I grew up in a society and culture where I was told that, like, even when I used to question things as a kid, like, why, when we would go to Pakistan, and I lived in Abu Dhabi, but in the summers and in spring break and everything, we would go to visit our extended family in Pakistan, and I would see children who were my age who were begging on the streets or working in child labor or not being in school, and I would question that. I would ask my parents, like, why is this kid not in school? Why is a girl my age cleaning my house instead of being in school right now? And the answer I was given was, oh, that's her destiny. Be grateful that you're here and they're there. Like, this is how it's supposed to be. This is how it's always been. And the question I would always ask inside of me, like, just because it's been this way all the time does not mean it's okay. So when you feel that unease, that's your voice trying to tell you something. And listen to it, pay attention to it, pay attention to your body, pay attention to that intuition. Because, like I said, our body speaks to us in nudges and whispers and feelings. There's no but the voices around us are loud, right? So when we have to create that space within ourselves, like, just sit with ourselves. What is my voice trying to tell me? That unease is your guide, is your guiding compass. And if you're feeling that unease, that is enough to do something about it. And that doesn't mean you have to make a big grand decision, but just something tiny, something incremental that moves you towards something that's healthier. And keep doing it, keep doing it. Like I said, any journey is just 1,000 little micro steps. So whatever micro step that you can take that is feasible, that is within reach, do that. And then think about the next step and the next step. And that, as you do that, your vision and your goal is going to become clearer and clearer, because you will when you start to trust your intuition, now it'll start telling you more things, right? When you listen to it now, it's going to start telling you some more stuff. You're going to start paying attention to, something else that you may want to do. Like, when I thought about medicine, and I didn't know I was actually going to be a doctor. I thought I just want to do something in mental health. I don't know what. I feel uneasy in my finance career. I don't think it's right for me. But when I created that space to listen to that uneasiness feeling and to trust it, then it became clearer and clearer and clearer over time. And until I could see it crystal clear that, yes, this is what I want to do. So trust that feeling that you're having inside of you. That is enough to base your decision on. And again, it's micro steps.
There's a question from John. How do you distinguish between true self-love and self-sacrifice disguised as love?
Oh, that is such a beautiful question. Thank you, John. True self-love is not selfless. So one of the things I speak about in the book is this myth of selflessness. And selfless is a word that the world rewards you on. I remember one of the awards that I got when I was working in banking. I was awarded an award that went by, like, I think it was called Mentor of the Year, because I used to mentor a lot of women and people and in the bank. And my boss was asked to give a speech and describe how he would think of me, right? Like, describe me. And he said in his talk that, when I think of Samra, I just think of selflessness. She is so selfless. She's so giving. But think about it. To be giving to others, I need to be less to myself. I need to give up myself. I need to be less of myself. That is not self-love. That is self-sabotage and self-sacrifice. So while at that time, this was about 10 years ago, I felt really proud to be called selfless. Today, I don't. I am not selfless. I am definitely self-loving, which allows me to love other people even more and in a healthier way. So like when you're selfless, when you're so empathetic but you're empathetic without boundaries, that is actually self-sabotage. And the difference between self-loving and being self-sacrificing is the presence or absence of boundaries. If you are giving yourself so much that you are now being unkind to yourself, if you're being so empathetic to others that you are hurting yourself in the process, if you are putting others' feelings ahead of you so much that you are always on the back burner, that is not self-love. That is self-sacrifice, and that's self-sabotage. Self-love, it allows us to love others in a way that is also good to ourselves, that is also healthy for us. And as a mother, I love my children so much I would do anything for them, but I would not sacrifice myself. I would not sacrifice my sense of self, because then I'm actually even setting up the wrong role model for them. I don't want them to sacrifice themselves for anybody. I definitely want them to serve others. I want to be of service to others. I want to do good for other people. I love what I do. I am a doctor. Every single patient, I want to go the extra mile and be the best physician I can be and provide them the best care that I can. At the same time, I'm also very mindful of where my boundaries lie. I'm not going to allow somebody to disrespect me. I'm not going to burn myself out to the point where I'm so depleted. I also take care of myself and fill my own cup so I can show up better for others. And that is the difference between self-sacrifice and self-love. I hope that made sense.
It did. And Sabina responded to your answer. Thank you for your answer. I share all your points. So glad you were able to find and live your own life and to help inspire other women to find theirs. You seriously rock.
Oh, thank you, Sabina.
And then Pang wrote, "What a brave woman." So I was curious. Now you've just released the second book. Where is it going now? What's ahead? What are you working on?
Well, it's the second book is still fresh, so I think I'll be doing a lot of hopefully a lot more of talks like this and promoting and everything, and want to get it into the most hands as possible. And then, I'm, like I said, I'm in my residency program in psychiatry at the University of Toronto, and that is demanding in itself. I have some ideas about my third book, which I'm not going to share right now, but there are things that I'm working on, and like when I think about my sort of purpose, like you think about purpose, and there's this new age sort of definition of purpose. There's one thing that you have to find that you're good at and then monetize it and leave a legacy. I mean, like, that's not the purpose that I talk about, because that in itself is another myth. Like, we're 8 billion people in the world. Like, we're all going to do similar things. And there are certainly a lot of people I seek inspiration from and take inspiration from. So I think, but in my case, if I were to define, what my mission in life is, to help as many people see the light that they have within themselves. When we think about courage, we think we have to acquire it or we have to seek it, but actually it's inside of us. We just need to trust it enough. And that requires skills, and that requires work, and that requires unlearning and learning. And that's the journey I'm on, and hopefully inspire more and more people to also learn to love themselves and find that courage and access it. And I do that in, whether it's in my with my patients or readers or audiences. And I think every day that I do it, I feel like I'm just getting started. And like, what keeps me going are proof points that I get from people who write to me. Like, there was one time a man wrote to me that he said, I have a 17-year-old daughter and her wedding is fixed for next month. I have fixed her wedding and I just read your story and I'm going to cancel that wedding and send her to school. And that 17-year-old daughter could have been me. At one point it was me, right? So you just never know. When you speak up and you share your story, like, stories are the best ways to connect us. And when we share our stories, when we share our humanity with each other, we realize that there is so much more that unites us than divides us. There is so much more that brings us together. It allows us to build bridges instead of walls. It allows us to share love and humanity and forgiveness with each other instead of canceling each other or disconnecting because of whatever perceived differences we think we have, right? And I truly believe in that unity and love. And that is what I try to impart into the world as much as I can. So, that's what I'm always going to keep doing. And I'm just very grateful to have these opportunities to do that.
Thank you. Well, it's so inspiring to hear you speak, and thank you for sharing with our audience. And I wanted to remind everybody, the book is Unconditional. You can get it at banyan.com. And where can they find you, look you up? Where should they?
Oh, I'm very, very, very easily found. I am. You can find me on Instagram. The handle is I am Samra Zafar. You can find me I have my own YouTube channel as well, and I post, clips from my speeches and whatnot there. I'm starting to do more and more on there too. And my website is just my name, samrazafar.com. And you can directly contact me through my website. So if you actually go on the website and you fill out the contact page, it comes directly to my email. And, even if I don't respond right away, that doesn't mean I'm not getting it. I do try to respond as quickly as possible. So please do reach out to me. It's not onerous. You're not overstepping. I love hearing from folks. So please go ahead and write if you want to. And LinkedIn is another channel, but like I said, I'm very approachable. And if you want to talk, like, I'm not going to give you medical advice, but at anything life related, or just, sharing your own story or your own journey or anything, that, I'm happy to be of support.
Thank you for the work you're doing. And thank you all for coming out today. And until next time.
Thank you, everybody, for joining. And it's been a true honor. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for Branches of Wisdom, a podcast of Banyan Books and Sound, Canada's spiritual and healing resource since 1970. Our podcast producer is Jacob Steele. Watch all our conversations on YouTube by searching for Banyan Books, or listen on your favorite podcast platform. Please subscribe, follow, like, and leave your reviews and comments. We love to hear from you. For all our live events, books, and more, visit us at banyan.com.